Hey folks, and welcome to Letters for Now. This is Dan. Well, I've been hearing the same thing from a lot of people lately, or at least it feels like it. And sometimes it comes up in passing, other times it arrives like something heavy they've been carrying for too long. It's the sense that they're feeling more and more alone. Not just alone in a personal or emotional way, but alone in the place where they live. Alone on their street, suspicious of the people next door, and wary of the folks down the block, ultimately unsure of who they can trust or even talk to. And that feeling doesn't stay local. It grows. First it stretches across the neighborhood, then the town, and before long it starts to feel like the whole country is unraveling. So I want to share a few things I've been trying, ways I'm trying to strengthen the connections around me, not because I think it'll fix everything, but because I believe the time is coming, and in some ways it's already here, when we'll need our neighbors more than we have in a long time. And when that moment comes, you'll either have a community or you'll feel the ache of not having one. Right now we're caught between two stories about how to move forward. One says we should go back to some version of the past when things were supposedly simpler and better. It's a story full of longing, but not always rooted in reality. And the other says we should speed ahead, build the next app, launch the next startup, trust the next piece of technology to solve the messes that we've made. But in the middle of those two stories, between nostalgia and acceleration, there's a group of people who often get overlooked. The ones who've simply stayed put. They've lived in the same place, on the same street, for decades. And they carry something we forget to value. Memory. Not the kind of memory you can search for online, but memory rooted in a place. And in that place's routine. And maybe even in relationships that lasted in that space. And I think that if we're wise, we'll not only start listening, but in order to listen, you will probably have to coax the speaker to speak. So that's what I've been doing. Little by little, I've been reaching out to the people on my block who've been here the longest. Not just on my block. We think big block, whole neighborhood block. I ask what they remember, what they used to do, how things worked when neighbors saw each other more often than they saw a screen or the supercomputer in their pocket. These aren't grand stories. They're small, everyday things. But they carry weight, and they hold clues about how we might live better together. What I'm trying to do is bring a few of those things back. Not with fanfare or perfection, but bring them back just enough to feel the threads start to reweave. One neighbor told me that years ago, there was a rotating lunch in the neighborhood. Every couple of weeks or maybe once a month, someone would host. And people who were home during the day, often parents or retirees, decades ago they spoke about stay-at-home moms, would come by and they would share recipes and they would sit down for a meal together and catch up. There was no agenda, but there was this natural rhythm of gathering. It struck me how doable that still is. Especially now with so many folks working from home or juggling flexible schedules, that kind of lunch could come back. Or maybe it's coffee or tea, whatever feels natural. The point isn't the meal, obviously. It's the invitation. That same neighbor told me there used to be an annual block party too, or something akin to a block party. One year they even blocked off the street. I remember events like that from when I lived in New York and Chicago. And there'd be music, and kids would dart between tables, and people would laugh over folding chairs and whatever drink they might have in hand. It doesn't happen here anymore. But maybe it could. And maybe the path back starts with something simpler. A potluck for 4 people. A back porch with an extra chair. Another neighbor offered me something different. Flowers. Not from a store, but from their own garden. These were plants that had grown in this neighborhood for decades. When they offered me a cutting of them, they told me how to care for it, what kind of sunlight it liked and thrived in, and which parts of the yard had better soil, and how to keep the critters from chewing them down. I carried that plant a few hundred yards down the road and ultimately gave it a new home. And it felt like a small handoff of sorts, like in a relay race. Something that had lasted was now being passed along. And over time, those kinds of handoffs add up. Even for me, people have shared gardening tips, stories of what's worked on this soil because they know it, how they've managed pests and critters, and how they lay out their beds so they don't flood after a storm. Maybe you can, but I don't think you can really search for that type of stuff online and rely on it. And even if you can, I think it's better to have that conversation in person. Ultimately, I think we've lost the sense that you have to ask someone who's tried it before. And then there was the evening one of my elderly neighbors knocked on our door during dinner. This was just a couple nights ago. She'd received one of those scam text messages, something about a fraudulent credit card charge, and wasn't sure if it was real, so she came to ask. And that might sound like a small thing, but I think it speaks volumes. It means she knew she could show up unannounced and ask for help. That she wouldn't be brushed off or ignored because we were around the corner at the table and could sort of hide from the doorbell. And even more so, the knowledge that she had someone to check in with. She's actually the same neighbor who, every garbage day, she waits for the trucks to come and then walks house to house, rolling the bins back up from the curb. She doesn't make a show of it. She just does it, week after week, and oftentimes, if the trucks come early, she's done it before people get out of bed. That's what care looks like in practice, even if some neighbors think it's strange. And lately, with some of the younger families on the block, we've been working to bring back another tradition. Kids showing up at each other's doors and asking, "Can you play?" It's how many of us grew up, riding bikes, knocking on doors, figuring out what the afternoon would hold. That kind of free movement faded somewhere along the way, and it got replaced by schedules and screens and a sense of risk that grew larger than life. But we're trying to create space for it again. Letting kids explore and meet and move and reconnect with the people who live closest to them. The exact thing that I'm also trying to do as an adult. I'm trying to teach them that there's a place for this and there's a way to make it happen. And it looks like getting on your bike and riding to that house and ringing the doorbell and asking if they can play. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes helicopter parents say you're not taking care the way you should. Right? That you're somehow leaving the door open for catastrophe. What I've been learning through all this is that community doesn't come back all at once. And it doesn't have to be a big campaign or a mission with a name. It begins when someone knocks, or offers a plant, or rolls a bin back up from the road. Especially if they've never asked you if it was okay to do so. It's in the habits that don't announce themselves, is what I'm trying to say. The small acts of consistency that remind us we're part of something, shared, even if we don't always see it clearly. You don't need to share politics with someone to accept a meal from their table. You don't have to agree on everything to lend a ladder or give advice on growing tomatoes. It turns out that some of the strongest civic foundations are built not through speeches or protests, but through potlucks and tool sharing, and a neighbor showing up at your door to ask for help. We keep waiting for something large to fix what feels broken. But maybe what's needed is smaller than we thought. Maybe it's right outside our front door. So if you're wondering where to start, try asking someone older than you what used to happen around here. What worked? What brought people together? What rhythms made the street feel alive? And if there's no one nearby to ask, borrow from somewhere else. Start something you've heard about. A tool library, a community meal, a shared herb garden. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to begin. And it will become perfect because you make it your own. What is perfect in your own space may be wildly imperfect 20 miles down the road. So please don't wait until the crisis comes to realize you need each other. Start now, while there's still time to build the trust that takes time. And please go small, really small. A cup of tea, an invitation to walk a dog, a knock on a door for some other reason. I randomly brought a neighbor soup the other day, and it was so unexpected and unplanned that I knocked on the door and I said, I make soup sometimes, and I thought you might like this. And then it dawned on me, I don't even know if you have any allergies. And thankfully they didn't. And a few days later they came back and they said that they enjoyed it so much they were hoping to get the recipe. And then a few days later I wrote it by hand on a piece of paper and I put it in their mailbox. Those are a multitude of small things, but they add up to mean much, much more. Because what you're rebuilding isn't just connection, it's capacity. And when something hard arrives, whether it's a storm or a fire or a failing system, it's those nearby relationships that hold the line. There's a simple act in gardening called taking a cutting. You snip a stem from something that's grown strong and you plant it somewhere new. And if the soil is good and the timing's right, it takes root. It begins again. That's what I hope this is. Taking a cutting from what worked and letting it grow again. On a different part of the street. In a different generation. And with new people tending to it. Not to go backward, not to recreate something exactly, but to honor what was resilient and to make space for it to bloom again. All right. As a postscript here, I felt compelled to do this because often, whether it's content that I put out here or on TikTok or on YouTube, I will often get the question, what do we do? How do we fix this? Or even more dire, I get comments like, all is lost, right? Everything is we're already too far gone. And I don't think that there's any such thing as too far gone, because whether you like what happens or what comes on the other side of some crisis or some period of time, something is still there. And if something's going to be there, you have an option or an opportunity to make it something that you feel is important. And so I don't think there's even a possibility for everything to be lost. Something always can be shaken loose. And from shaking that loose, we can replant it and try to build and grow and create something different. All right, folks. If you enjoyed this, please share it. If you've not been to dancoyle.com yet, I would ask that you give it a visit, dancoyle.com. There's a ton of stuff there. You might just find something that interests you. And I will see you in the next one.